Today, I feel like talking about making money as a composer, specifically in the first 5 years, which is where I am. It's really weird thinking about this sometimes because for so long, all I wanted was to get paid to do film scoring and to finally have that title of like, this is what I do, it's my job and whatever, and not necessarily full time, which I'm not. Like, to be totally honest with you, film composing makes up only like 25% of my income as of last year, and that's something that I hope to raise as I grow, of course. But the reality is, like, making your living outside of composing is a tale as old as time. Even Mozart himself had to give piano lessons to what he described as fat, ugly, stupid women. He freaking cracks me up. Yeah, if you know anything about Mozart, you know that all he wanted to do was write operas and live his musical life, which he did. But yeah, the best description I got from one of my piano teachers was Mozart was basically a Disney child star who became famous really fast, and you can put two and two together. Anyways, I want to address like not making money in indie film, and I really think this depends on your perspective. So for me, I decided I wanted to pursue film composing in 2019, and then obviously the pandemic hit, so it wasn't like ideal, but also there was like this shift to like collaborating on a smaller scale again, I think, and a shift in people realizing, what they want to do with their lives and how important it was to have personal fulfillment. And a lot of people started businesses. So, with all that in mind, I basically have come to see making money as a composer in two ways. The first is by looking at the rates that I charge and how that has changed over time. So when I first started out, I didn't use rates. I kind of just went with whatever budget the filmmaker had. And in indie film, that tends to be quite small, especially when you're first starting out. Now, I'm not in a place where I'm landing like 6K deals or anything, but I have broken, the $1,000 barrier in terms of like how much I'm compensated for a project, so that's cool. It may not sound like a lot, but in some places around the world, that's really, really good money. Like, it's always about perspective. Yeah, rates back then were not a thing for me, and now they are. My friend Zach Heidi made a lovely video on this topic and how to determine a rate that makes sense for you and how to grow that over time. I took that advice, and since then, I have been charging $500 per minute pretty consistently. Anytime someone asks me to work below that, I try and change the scope of the project. So instead of saying like, oh, okay, I'll lower my rate to like $300 per minute, I'll say like, okay, can you make this film work? Could we make the story better, perhaps with less music, maybe 2 minutes instead of 4 minutes? Would that be better for your budget? Would that be more comfortable in the wallet for you? So, like, learning to be accommodating to the filmmakers that I work with is something that I've learned over time. And I've also learned to implement payment plans, which make getting paid bigger amounts. Filmmakers are very similar to us as composers who are working in film, obviously, and money is quite tight if this is what they do like full time, and they went to film school and all those things when they're early in their career. So I try and respect that as much as possible, and instead of avoiding them and just immediately saying like, oh, they just graduated, like I'm not going to work with them, I try and ask more questions to figure out like, hey, what's comfortable for you right now? Like, how can we make this work and make your film the best it can be, but also allow me to be compensated fairly? So we work backwards from those two things. And on one of my recent projects, which I'm about to start this month, we came to the conclusion that I could charge, $500 per minute. And we ended up cutting down the total amount of music from like 5 minutes to 3 minutes and 14 seconds. So that extra 2 minutes is an extra $1,000 that was just like cut off, right? And that helped a lot. And we were able to come up with a plan where they could pay me monthly and we could extend the timeline of the project. So instead of having the music due end of the month, April, we could have it due like in September instead. So that allowed me to get paid what I wanted to get paid, and it also allowed the filmmaker to do this in a sustainable way. Now, it's not perfect. Like, the project is going to be dragged out quite a bit, but what I love is that now we can really take our time, get to know each other on the project, and make music without a huge deadline looming over our heads. So although I'm not being paid my rate like month by month, because the payment plan is quite generous, I gave them until the end of the year, but we decided to meet halfway. So this is like maybe a little bit too complicated to go into right now, but yeah, you can work out payment plans with filmmakers and make it work. That doesn't happen unless I think both people really respect each other and really want what's best for the film. That's really number one. Yeah, so that's the first way that I see making money in indie film. The second would be like the total fee. In the beginning, I was not being paid very much, if at all, and the total fee was quite low, like just in the couple $100 range. And over time, that has changed, partly because of my rates, but also because I started to enforce constraints on the work that I was doing. So instead of agreeing to do everything that a filmmaker asked, I would instead look at the project and ask, like, what is best for the project and like what is my perspective on this, rather than just immediately agreeing with the filmmaker. So the example that I just gave of cutting down a 4 minute score into a 3 minute score or whatever, that happened because we watched the film together and I formed my own opinion and then talked to the filmmaker about it. So over time, yes, the total fee that I've been paid has increased over the years, but I stopped looking at it as an indicator of like my financial success. I think the bottom line of how much I've made in film composing is not a number that I think about all the time. I'm really just trying to focus on, which filmmakers do I really love collaborating with? What kind of music do I really enjoy writing? And like, what am I currently charging per minute? Like, those are the only things I really think about. Comparing myself is something that I have to manage quite frequently. So if you know me, you know that I'm friends with Zach Heidi, and we have like a group of friends that we meet with regularly and everything. But what I haven't told you is that before we met and became friends, I was like a secret fan of his YouTube channel, and I used to watch his videos at work and in the bathroom when I was pretending to be working. And his videos were so valuable to me that I would play them and listen to them like podcasts on the way to work during my commute. And so when we finally, became friends and everything, I was kind of like starstruck for a little bit because he is someone I have looked up to for a long time. I used to think of him purely in terms of, what is possible. Because before Zach, I didn't know anyone that was really embracing a career, online, and a career where there's more than just making music for clients. It's also, community, the impact that you leave, and really tapping into what you love and what comes naturally to you. And that doesn't have to just be music. Zach is way more eloquent than I am about talking about these things. So, if you don't know who he is, like, please check out his channel. But, yeah, I mention him because now that we are friends and we are like in a group where we help each other, sometimes we talk about our businesses, and because I listen more than I talk in those calls, I have a tendency to write down everything that they're saying and then take it as like advice that I think I should apply to my business when that's not necessarily the right thing to do. So I remember when I first learned that Zach was charging like $1,000 per minute, and that one of the clients that he works with was like, oh, that's too expensive. But then they ended up coming back to him because he's just so good at what he does. When I heard that story, I was like, wow, should I be charging $1,000 per minute? And then suddenly I felt like, oh man, $500 is too low. Like, and then, I just got all in my head of like, oh man, but Zach's been, composing. He's been on YouTube for 18 years. Like, I just started like 5 years ago. Like, do I deserve to, charge that much? And all this like chatter in my head, really. And this is very different from when before I knew him, and I knew none of the details, and all I knew was like, wow, this is what's possible. Like, Zach makes his income online, and he works on local projects, and he charges well for what he does, and he gets to live a life that he loves. And now that is kind of like mixed in with the, comparing myself to a colleague kind of thing. Like, oh, Zach's charging this much, I need to charge more. Sometimes it helps me, light a fire under my butt and push me to go into the direction that I want. But sometimes I find myself wanting things I didn't necessarily want for myself, or aren't like relevant to me, and I just kind of like mindlessly adopt it just because it's what Zach's into. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I'm trying to think of an example. I think now, knowing Zach, and like, I don't compare myself to him in a negative way anymore. I really see him. I'm really trying to see him and other composers, some of whom I don't even know personally, as like as a reminder of what's possible. And I think it's really important for me to have some kind of way to replace this behavior of comparing myself and then wishing I had what they had, or like saying that someone's successful because they're rich, or their parents are rich, or they got lucky, or they're beautiful. Like, these are the dumbest things that I tell myself when I see someone successful, like social media, and it's all just surface level, right? Like, we don't know the full story, which is just the nature of things. But Zach has always been kind of like this beacon of like, wow, that's cool. I want that for myself, And he's just such an awesome guy. But this is not me fangirling or anything. It's just that when you are around people who are doing the things that you want to do and making the kind of money that you want to make and all these things, that fear that I have about like, how am I gonna make money, and like, am I doing this right? Like, that didn't completely go away. It's something that I have to really manage. And if you've listened to my other videos, you know that I've struggled with imposter syndrome quite a bit. At the end of the day, there is no one way to do anything, not even in art and science. Yes, please follow instructions. gravity works, you know? But in art there's no absolute. Like there's potentially unlimited ways to do one thing and maybe even more ways to do unknown things. Like there's so many things about film scoring and life and business that are just unknown to me, and I think that's incredibly exciting. But also there's a lot of uncertainty and fear around like what comes next, because when I was in medicine, my life was very much like laid out for me, and there was legitimate comfort in knowing what the next step to take was, what the next milestone was, what credentials I needed to get there, and how many hours, how many classes. Like that way of thinking is just gone now. Like as a business owner and a creative person, the amount of freedom is just insane. Like I can make this whatever I want it to be, just like how Zach can make his business however he wants it to be. We can optimize for different things, can optimize for growing and scaling, or optimize for like a lifestyle business. And if these words sound foreign to you, like I highly recommend you, you know, dig around and see if starting your own composing business is something that you want to do. And look at me and look at Zach as a sign of what's possible. I I used to think quite small, and I would tell myself, you know, I'd be happy with just whatever, like doing teaching and composing part-time. Like I don't have to do it full-time to be happy, and I believe that's true. I'm determined to be happy no matter what, but at the same time that's not really conducive to like building a life and really having like this spirit of self-determination and like exercising your power in life, which is something that starts in here. I guess I used to be afraid to like really go after something that I wanted. I haven't really articulated these thoughts like out loud before, so I'm sorry if this is kind of rambly. All the things I was told growing up about who I should be and like what I should do, that was very hard to overcome because I could not separate those thoughts from my own. And as a kid, I was very chaotic and I got into trouble, and I wasn't, you know, afraid to try things out my own way and then learn my lesson the hard way. And as an adult, I find myself coming back to that version of myself. I had to let go of a lot of those thoughts, which were not mine. And occasionally they do come back. And the cool thing is that my relationship with how I feel about those thoughts has changed. I've done coaching and I've taken therapy in the past, and one of the things I learned was to recognize the thought as not my own and like giving it a name, or literally saying like, oh, that's my mom talking, not me, you know? It seems really silly, but I find myself wanting to come back to that just because as I continue on my own journey as a composer who also loves to, you know, teach and like help other people, filmmakers and composers alike, I still have to do that work of like being engaged and like actively kind of filtering what I accept as true in my head. Even YouTube comments that I get that are, you know, mean, whatever. Like, I don't really care, but sometimes they do get to me, and I have to do the same thing. And I don't even know these people, you know, that's pretty freaking crazy. It's the price of being on the internet, I guess. No matter what I do to make a living, I will always be me, and I will always be a composer until, I don't know, I decide to stop composing. Like, that's fine. Anything is possible. Unless you're honest with yourself, like, you will never get to see that like happen. Sorry, I thought I had a booger in my nose, and like it was like one of those dry boogers that like every time you breathe it's like flapping in the wind. The last thing I'll say about making money in indie film is the time that you look at it through. So when I look at last year, it was pretty good. When I look at the years before, not so good. When I look at, you know, the total amount I've ever made over the past 5 years, and then I think about, you know, what is like possible moving forward, I think it's pretty good. It's very slow, and I've heard from, you know, many people in the composing world, but also the business world, that if you want to have a lifestyle business, you don't need more clients to have that. It's really about being specific about the kind of clients that you want to work with, and work with people that can like pay you well and really value you for what you do. I've heard from a composer that I met who's based in Italy. He worked in like AAA games and stuff. He has a handful of clients, and that allows him to live the life that he wants to live in Italy. I believe he's Canadian, and he's enjoying life in Italy. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you are still here, leave me a horse emoji, because we have a Swedish horse poster over there, and you can't see it, but yeah, leave me a little horse to let me know that you got this video and that this was helpful, and I'll see you next time. Bye.